Welcome back, and always a delight when we have time to sit down with Dan Perkins. Dan is all over the place. He's a political commentator. He's the host of What's on My Mind podcast. He has a couple of websites, danperkins.guru, songs and stories for soldiers.us, which he has an amazing outreach to veterans. And he leans over to his soft side once in a while, and he writes novels, a series of them called Sad Eyes. And there's a picture of the cover of the books there, Sad Eyes by Dan Perkins, and I think you'll find those to be very entertaining as well. Brother Dan, good to see you. How are you, friend?
Good morning, sir. I'm fine. And yourself?
Oh, good, good. Are you in Mars? Where are we?
Yes.
Well, finally, we got a human on Mars. What do you know? Good to see.
My background's interesting.
All right, good stuff. Boy, where do we start here? So much going on. Well, just as we were getting ready to go on the air earlier this morning, it looks like these judge shoppers struck gold. They found this judge to stop immigrations again, and the Supreme Court's already ruled in Trump's favor. Where do you think this one's going to go?
Well, I think, again, you're right. The court has ruled. The Supreme Court has ruled in the case of the 1897 law. This is going after the immigrants who were flown in, hundreds of thousands of immigrants who were flown into the United States, dropped off of cities, never went through the border control, and were given a temporary pardon. This is another executive order issued by President Biden, and he's trying to use his executive power to overturn that previous legislation or previous rule under executive privilege. And the court is saying he can't do that. Well, he can do that. So we have another situation, and I feel very comfortable that when this court goes to the court case goes to the Supreme Court, we'll get the same result, that the president has the power under Article 2 to manage the country and to protect and defend the Constitution and its people. And this one particular judge already did what the Supreme Court said that these judges can't do. So the question really should be, are the lower courts, the district courts, going to ignore the rule even if it comes out of the Supreme Court?
Well, it seems to me, again, these are the beginning fundamentals of this case. If these people who were flown in, obviously here illegally, and then given immunity, can a sitting president give immunity to a non-citizen? I think it's a great question. I don't believe so. And in addition, it wasn't really, as I understand it, and I'm only a practicing attorney, I'm not a real attorney, but the attorneys that I've talked to is that these were pardons for a specific period of time. After that period of time, had they not applied for citizenship, the pardons would disappear. So it's a matter of timing. And the timing situation is that if the order expires and the pardon expires, then they got to go. But whether or not the court will say that the executive order can be reversed by another president, I think there's ample precedent to it. But I really think that the issue is, are we seeing a split, a significant split between the district courts, which are under the supervision of the Congress, not the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court? And what I don't think there's any remedy that I can see in the Constitution that gives the Supreme Court the ability to override. They can opine that a comment made or a decision made by a lower court is unconstitutional. But in this case, remember we had two cases in the Biden administration on student loans where the Biden administration decided not to obey the Supreme Court in a decision, and they overturned it and they said, we don't care, we're going to go on with it anyway. And so we have this situation now where the lower courts seem to be rebelling against the Supreme Court, and I don't know how that's fixed.
Okay, so this brings in, there's several things on the table here, because I think that part of this ruling today brings into question whether or not, at the time, President Biden had the authority to give immunity to an illegal citizen. I think that's part of the argument. That'll have to be played out. The other part of the argument is, can one branch of government tell the other branch of government what to do? At the end of the day, the judicial branch, the supreme ruler of the judicial branch is the Supreme Court. Now, the district courts are given jurisdiction by Congress, and they're funded by Congress. But I think at the end of the day, isn't the hammer still the Supreme Court? Because you can't mix branches of government together.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but when they passed the court reform in 1897 and established the district courts, the Constitution didn't speak of this. The Constitution only spoke about the Chief Justice and the 4 justices of the Supreme Court at that time as the only court. What I believe is a situation here is it is not the Supreme. I don't believe, to quote the Supreme Court, I don't think the Supreme Court has standing to administratively try and control the lower courts. That administrative oversight, and this is very key, the oversight of the district courts goes directly to Congress, not the Supreme Court. So any changes that are going to be made in how they function have to originate from the Congress.
I get that point. So they could create legislation that limits their reach and limits their authority. The merits of a case are still going to be weighed by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but the merits of the case are not all-encompassing all over the United States. According to the new rules that are being worked on in the Congress, that district judge has to stay within his geographical territory. They can no longer issue temporary restraining orders that cover the entire nation in one court.
This is so fascinating. So in the meantime, the president's deportation on the ones that President Biden flew in is on hold. I guess we'll have to wait till this works its way to the top. But you know that the President Trump has probably got his appeal team going to the Supreme Court immediately under emergency basis.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what's happening? The court, when the Supreme Court ruled last week that D.C. judge was operating, for lack of a better description, illegally, he was not empowered under his rights as a district judge to issue temporary restraining orders on a national basis, nor does he have the right to interfere with Article 2, which is the operations and the responsibilities of the President of the United States to manage the country. So I really think that what Trump is doing is knocking them off one at a time, and each time he gets a favorable ruling, it weakens the case of what's going on. And it appears that this thing that you announced came out this morning was another example of judge shopping, and they went and got a judge who was appointed by Barack Obama to hear the case and to issue the temporary restraining order.
You know, there's a little bit of a silver lining to all this, Dan. We now know what the Democrats have been up to judicially, and their last wall of obstruction against President Trump is through these lower courts. They've lost everything else. And so their last wall of trying to do damage to the president, or at least interrupt or speed bump his agenda, are these lower courts. And slowly but surely they're being knocked out. But I think the lesson to be learned here is how important judge elections and appointments really are.
Right. I did a commentary which I sent to you called the Democratic Playbook.
Right.
And there are 3 chapters in the playbook. The first one deals with what you're just talking about, legislating from the bench, and Donald Trump is affecting that by continuing to appeal and getting the lower courts overturned. Number 2 is all the corruption in the government where the funding was going to help support the Democratic Party and its objective. and Mr. Trump is going through that with Elon Musk. And then the other one is the actual political corruption of the leadership of the Democratic Party, and some corruption on the part of the Republican Party. So what's happening is that Donald Trump is since he's come in, he has a plan to destroy the playbook. And what you're seeing in the inability of the Democrats to come up with a strategy is they know that all the plays in their playbook have been overruled, and they don't have a new rule. And so they're desperately trying the old things, and they're not working.
Good point. One quick question before I take a break here. I don't know if you watched yesterday's exchange in the Oval Office when the president of El Salvador was in the room. And, of course, what comes up from the CNN that was really kind of funny to watch, but the president went after CNN pretty hard. But is the supposedly Maryland man that was improperly deported, when they find out that he was, by two courts, seen as an MS-13 ties and member, and that even the president of El Salvador says, I'm not going to return him, I'd have to smuggle him to get him in. I mean, it was kind of a funny moment here. But
yes,
that whole exchange from not only the president of El Salvador, but Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, weighed in, along with the president's assistant, one of his assistants there, who's an attorney, all weighed in against the CNN reporter and pretty much explained the deal. This is a closed case, and the courts ruled in their favor.
Right. Yep. And the media is part of that playbook. They're being decimated. They're all of them are trying to change their lineups and see what happens. The two that need to be changed, and whether or not the networks have the courage to do it, The View needs to go, and Rachel Maddow needs to go. If those two go, the left is really in serious trouble of having a platform. Too many people on the left in the news media are bailing on Biden and that they were misled and to try and cover their tracks. But people aren't watching him anymore, Perry. They're just. I have a show that I do on AM/FM 24/7, twice a week. My audience is 1.3 million people a week. I get more money. I get more people listening to my show, my podcast, than CNN has in their network.
Yeah, I don't.
They're that small.
That's because other corporations own them. But sooner or later, the board will kick in and say, hey, there's no ROI here. Let's shut it down. So
right.
I don't know. Right. I hope Elon Musk buys it. And leaves.
They want him to buy MSNBC too. So.
Well, I know, but if he bought CNN, he could leave it CNN and just call it Conservative News Network. You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Don't have to change anything.
Okay. Well, listen. Before I find you with a tariff, I'll take a break and come back.
Okay.
Okay, welcome back. Dan Perkins back with us. And by the way, Dan, if people want to get your commentaries, how do they do that?
You can go to danperkinsmedia.org, and you'll see commentaries, and you'll also see shows.
Okay, danperkinsmedia.org. Okay, .org. All right, good stuff. All right, so the tariff deal is working. He's suspended a lot of tariffs.
130 countries.
Amazing. They have come to the table. I think it looks like, and this is a 30,000-foot view, they're going to start at 10% and maybe go down or just leave it at 10%, but everybody wants to talk. The only one that's not talking is China, and the response on their reciprocal has now moved them to 145% tariff from the United States. It looks like at the end of the day, China is now really in a corner. The world doesn't want to do business with them. The biggest marketplace in the world is still the United States. They still need the United States because 39% of their economy depends upon business in the United States. They're in a corner. They can't get anybody to create a coalition with. And their economy's in shambles, and they can't change their currency value overnight because that'll just put them into inflation. What's your take?
Can I ask you a question? Okay, let me ask you this.
question. Do you think it's possible that in the 130 countries so far who've decided they want to work with Mr. Trump, that one of the things that he or his representatives are saying in those meetings, or will be saying in those meetings, you can't do any business with China?
Wow.
And what happens if he gets 130 or 100 or I don't know, 50 or whatever, gets some number of nations to agree that it's more important for them to do business with the United States than to do with China? And will the world unite against China under Trump?
Gosh, I never thought of that. See, that's why you're Dan Perkins and I'm not. That would be brilliant if he could make it happen.
All he has to do is start meeting with these people and putting that on the table, and somebody will leak it. Maybe even somebody from the administration. But I believe that, as you were articulating just a moment ago, that when you get the world against you, where are you going to ship your stuff? And for a period of time, maybe those 130 nations can figure out how they can exchange import and exports among themselves without having to deal with China.
Well,
and so
isn't that question a little bit self-answering? Because the reason they've come to the table, their number one market is the United States, not China.
Everybody in the world wants to trade with the United States. It is the biggest market in the world. It's twice as big as China. So they want to have the ability to ship their goods into the United States and are willing to bring goods from the United States into their countries. It works both ways. And I just think that this is where the Chinese have made a mistake. When they got the number, the first number was 10, no big problem. 50, a little bit. 130 and counting out of 100, what the World Trade Organization said are 180 nations who do international trade out of 193 countries in the world. If you got 130 at some number, 140, 150, 160, 180, China is in very serious problems. So the question is, how will they respond? The conventional wisdom is that they might cave. I would suggest an unconventional wisdom might be they'll turn the table and go after Taiwan.
Okay, that was my response. The way you get out of this, you go into war.
Mm-hmm. They go after Taiwan.
Yeah, and what's our reaction to that?
First of all, we got to get some more bullets. We gave a lot of bullets away to Ukraine, and they're continuing. So we have to, and you can't make the quantity of bullets and missiles and rockets and tanks and all that stuff you want overnight. So we're going to have to buy some time, but we're going to need to put those factories running 24/7 and 3 shifts a day in order to build up our munitions, so that if we have to go there, what's very important, extremely important to that question that you're asking, is to get control of the Panama Canal.
Okay, so
because if the Chinese had it, they could stop us from going through the canal.
Yeah,
and that's a long trip around South America to get to.
And it looks like, yeah, and we're slowly getting control of that, so that's happening pretty fast. So one other quick question before we run out of time, and that is Iran. It appears that they're going to try to talk, but we know that Iran uses talks to delay. We also know that Iran's main purpose of having a nuke is to wipe out Israel and the United States. And both the United States and Israel are saying Iran can't have a nuke. Do you think a denuclearization of Iran is inevitable through military action?
I want to believe we don't have to do that, but let me say, and this is, to me, this is very, very important. Not because I'm saying it, because it's reality. At the bargaining table will be Muslims
and infidels. And the language in the Quran tells a Muslim that they have the freedom and the ability and the responsibility to lie to infidels to obtain whatever it is they want. And I'm saying to you, Terry, that we can't expect to go to the table, and no matter what they say about they want to change, we cannot believe them, because their history is that they are liars and they're not dependable. So are we going to have to go militarily? I think that if we see that the price of crude oil is now about $61 a barrel, that's creating all kinds of havoc. If we go in there and destroy their oil infrastructure, their refineries and their pipelines, they have no revenue. They have no money coming in, and the people will rebel. And I believe that the people have the best possible chance of overthrowing the government as opposed to military activity by us.
Okay, but it appears to me that the United States and Israel know exactly what you say, and that is the talk is over. We can't trust you. You've never stepped up. Everything you said is a lie.
Right.
The only thing you've gotten out of this is time, and we're out of time, and we don't trust you. That
Right.
leaves the options pretty narrow.
Right. Yeah, and I think that rather than trying to go after the nuclear devices, we're better off going after their oil infrastructure and their oil exports, and causing an uprising of the Iranian people to overthrow the government, and that's how we'll get the bombs or the bomb-making material out from underground.
So you think inevitably a regime change?
Yes, no question, and it'll come from the people, and it'll because the economy will be destroyed, there'll be starvation, and people will be hungry, and they'll be angry, and the Ayatollahs will release the Red Guard to try and quell any rebellion, but they won't be able to stop it. That's what I believe is going to happen.
Okay, well, I think the line has been drawn in the sand, and that's a sandy area.
Yeah, all the sand you want for free.
And I think it's much closer than perhaps we think. There's a lot going on. Hey, good to see you, friend. Keep up your writing. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, a couple of places here. DanPerkinsMedia.org. You can go there. DanPerkins.guru. You can go to SongsAndStoriesForSoldiers.us. That's where he has an amazing outreach to veterans. And by the way, the devices he uses is really therapeutic. And check out his novels. And that is Sad Eyes. There's a picture of that. That's the soft side of Dan. Yes, he has a soft side. And then check out his podcasts, which you can be one of the millions listening. And that's What's on My Mind podcast with Dan Perkins. God bless you, friend. Good to see you.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you again.
You bet.